This story takes place immediately following the new ending for the Cyberpunk 2077 DLC, Phantom Liberty. If you care about spoilers, you should probably play that before listening to this. If you don't care about spoilers, though, carry on. I present to you The Lovers by Valor 48.
I'm in Pittsburgh, and I'm married. If you ever hop to the other coast, come on over for a beer, but now, really can't help you.
That's not... Wasn't expecting that.
2 years, see? I was lonely, lost in my head. First Evelyn, then you. No way I would have made it alone.
You know, we could have made it.
Sure. Maybe. But you were dying, and you up and disappeared. What was I supposed to do? But I'm good now, B. Please, don't take that away.
Don't have much of a choice, do I?
Goodbye, V. And I'm sorry.
I hung up without giving V a chance to say anything else. I'd already botched the call. Last thing I needed was for her to start pulling on my heartstrings. They were already stretched to the limit. Any further, and they would snap. 2 years. 2 long fucking years. All that time, not so much as a peep. Then, out of the blue, bam, V was back. She'd slipped into a coma or something like that. The details were still sketchy in my head. Hadn't really been listening by that point. I'd been too stunned to process her story, to properly explain things. In hindsight, I hadn't completely fucked things up. I'd stuck to the facts, kept emotion out of it, though I was sure V had picked up on the quiver in my voice towards the end. In fact, given the circumstances, I'd done pretty damn well, except for when I'd told her I was happy that her story had a happy ending. Talk about being tone deaf. She hadn't sounded happy, and for good reason. There was no good way to tell your ex that you'd not only moved on with your life after being ghosted, aka slipping into a coma, but that you'd also gone and gotten yourself married to boot. Hell of a 1-2 punch. Hopefully she'd be okay. Would have asked her myself, except, yeah. I'd been so rattled I hadn't even thought to ask. Fuck. 2 years. Just how?
Judy?
Bianca called out from her office.
Who was that?
No one, I said, a little too loud and fast for my liking. Didn't know why I was lying. My wife, Bianca, knew all about V, or rather, she knew everything I'd told her, which, admittedly, wasn't much. Just an old flame that had fizzled out. Certainly nothing to hide. Crap. At least I hadn't bungled things up even more by telling her it had been a wrong number. That would have only made things worse. No. V's call had simply caught me by surprise. That was all. I just needed a moment to get my bearings, collect my thoughts. I rose to my feet and straightened my skirt, frowning at the damp coffee stain that had spread across the silky white fabric. That wasn't going to come out. Should have gone with my instincts and chosen black instead. I glanced over my shoulder and saw Bianca absorbed in a virtue, her hand waving randomly through the air, editing our latest project. Be right back. Fortunately, I didn't have far to walk. The bathroom was right down the hall just a few steps away. One of the perks of a cozy studio location. Bullshit ad. Should have called it what it was, a hollowed-out roach motel fresh off of foreclosure. But given the state of the real estate market, we were lucky just to have snagged it. Most of Pittsburgh's urban center remained quarantined following some nuclear disaster half a century ago. As for the rest, well, it was a step up from Night City, technically speaking. Fewer gangs, less crime, the air didn't smell like 3-week-old diaper shit mixed with rotting fish, and the pop of gunfire wasn't as prevalent. It was utopia, all things considered. Just had to deal with rampant poverty, greedy corpse driving people further into the muck, and a nightlife one might consider exhilarating so long as your idea of a good time meant zoning out in front of your hollow after work and hoping you could do it again the next day. Still, I was safer here. Happier. 2 years. After relieving myself, I washed my hands and studied the reflection of the woman staring back at me. Judy Alvarez. She'd grown a lot over the last couple of years. Changed. She'd ditched the shorter cut and dye in favor of allowing her natural color to grow out. Black. Just like the dress she should have worn that was hanging up in her closet back home. Screamed corpo. She'd also had her tattoos erased. Fresh start, fresh canvas. A small cut traced across her eyebrow, compliments of her final run-in with the tiger claws on her way out of Night City. But other than all that and a few extra wrinkles here and there, she was the same woman she'd always known. Intelligent. Hopeful. Strong. Or so I told myself. Really can't help you? Why the fuck had I said that? Sounded like a customer service slave. Should have asked her to complete the survey at the end. I was surprised to see Bianca waiting for me by my office when I emerged. My office. A fancy term for the small workspace I'd carved out for myself. Most of my tech was stuff I'd grabbed from Lizzie's bar, my previous employer. Sensory sig amps, analyzers. I'd even clept my Fuyutsuki expression translator, an impressive, not to mention expensive, piece of equipment. But I still hadn't managed to fully assemble the same editing suite I'd enjoyed in the last phase of my life, the wandering soul phase. Dramatic name for those last few months in Night City when I hadn't had a clue what I was doing or why. V had vanished into thin air, my best choom Evelyn had offed herself, and my life had devolved into a series of meaningless expressions and actions. Until I met Bianca. "You alright?" she asked, obviously concerned. "Yep. Just had to process a little." Bianca's eyes narrowed, causing that cute little wrinkle to form above the bridge of her nose. Cute. That was the best way to describe her. Whereas V was lean and cut, Bianca was smooth and polished. Her cheeks, which I thought to be her best feature, were plump and round. The kind you really did want to squeeze between your fingers, just as my abuela had done. Her olive skin was as soft as real skin, not a blemish, natural or otherwise, to be seen. And her hair. Shit, when I ran my hands through it, it was like running them through water, so silky and dark. Totally wasn't jealous of her. On the surface, she was as Gannic as could be. Only her eyes hinted at what lay beneath that glossy exterior. At first glance, they looked like ordinary optics. A decorative lens with a few bells and whistles thrown in to justify the price tag. But upon closer inspection, and I'd spent countless hours inspecting them, it quickly became apparent that they were much more than that. Preem visual overlays, the sort only Kuroshi offered. Dilation matrices that expanded the visual spectrum well outside the natural human range. They even had sensory analyzers similar to what I used for BD editing. Girl could literally undress me with her eyes. Top shelf hardware, the sort that required some serious tech under the hood to run properly. I couldn't recall every piece of hardware she'd chipped, but suffice to say, she carried a lot more chrome in her body than she let on. Most of it was new, too. Wasn't a chrome junkie or anything like that, just liked the feel of it, gave her a sense of strength. But she didn't like to flaunt it. She was demure like that. She was all the things V wasn't, all the things I wasn't, and I was okay with that. Better than okay. And, of course, she'd wore black. "So, you gonna tell me what you needed to process?" she pressed. "Or do I gotta play 20 questions first? Just please don't tell me we're behind on our lease. Can't handle an aneurysm this early in the morning." "No, it's nothing like that. But we ought to tighten our belts for a bit. We'll be short on eddies till we get this Jinguji job filed away." "No, it's, I got a call from V. You remember, my ex?" Bianca's eyes widened. "You're fucking kidding." "Nope. Turns out she's alive and well. Still kicking back in NC. What did she want?" Interesting question to lead with. Not how's she doing or what happened to her. I couldn't blame her, of course. How else were you supposed to respond to the news that your wife's ex suddenly picked up the hollow and called after a 2-year hiatus? 2 years. Wanted to reach out, tell me she was okay. Don't know if you remember or not. She went through some pretty serious shit. Had a Saka biochip stuck in her head, nearly flatlined her. Had surgery to fix up her head, wound up in a coma. Woke up today, apparently. Shit. You can say that again. A sly grin spread its way across Bianca's face. Shit. Funny. I studied Bianca's reaction. She looked as bewildered as I felt. Funny. Even after 2 years, I still struggled to read her. She liked to keep her cards close to her chest, internalize, analyze, then share what was on her mind. Not my style, but we complemented each other quite nicely. "So, what did you tell her?" The meaning behind her question was plain. Gave her the deets. Told her where I was, who I was with, how things are now. How'd she take it? Like a vicious kick to the balls. About as good as you can expect. Jesus. Bianca eyed me over, her shock giving way to concern. "Are you sure you're all right? Get you anything?" I waved her away. "Nah, I'm all right. Just a lot, you know? Think I'm gonna dive back into work, try to get my mind off things." Bianca shot me a look but said nothing. She knew exactly what was going on inside my head, and she didn't need a pair of fancy optics to figure things out. I was an open book. If I felt it, I let it show. Always had, always would. But that wasn't necessarily a bad thing. Even though I often felt like my inability to regulate my emotions left me at a disadvantage, Bianca was sensitive and caring enough not to exploit it. She knew I would talk when I was ready to. Only question was, how long would that take? This wasn't the sort of thing you swept under the rug. V was alive. That alone was a lot to process. Would have taken me days to wrap my head around it. Throw in the fact that I'd utterly crushed her over the hollow and I had one hell of a problem. A problem I couldn't figure out right now. I needed time. Things were still too raw. And Bianca understood that. She could have probed if she really wanted to. Probably could have gotten more out of me too, but that wasn't her way. Instead, she gestured towards the brain dance wreath on my desk, giving me the space I needed. "How's that scene coming along anyway?" I rubbed my temples. Slow going. The actress is good, but you know how it is. Trying to isolate that exact moment where the right emotional beat hits. It's like looking for a needle in a dealer factory. Hear that? I still can't get this intro figured out. Need help? No, I got it. I'll tell you, Judy, I'm happy to be a business owner, but can't say I like the pressure of the biz. Still don't know how we managed to land this contract. The contract? Fuck me, what a colossal shitstorm that had turned out to be. Things had seemed simple enough on paper. Jinguji was launching a new fashion brand and wanted a BD campaign to go along with it. Easy peasy. The terms had been good, the pay better than we could have ever hoped for, and I was a hopeful person by nature. But best of all, they'd offered us complete creative control over the finished product, pending approval by the Jinguji board, of course. It was the job of a lifetime, the sort of job that could make or break a studio. And shit had it broken us. We were working around the clock, barely scraping by, and yet somehow we kept falling further and further behind schedule. We remained confident that we could hit the deadline, but every hour lost was an hour we had to scrounge up from somewhere else. And now, barring a miracle, I was about to lose several of them. All because V had come barging back into my life. God damn it. But it wasn't her fault. I couldn't be angry at her, just like I knew that it was up to me to keep Bianca from losing faith in herself. She sank faster than I did, almost as if all the self-doubt that had plagued her throughout her life weighed her down. A classic case of low self-esteem. But that was what lovers were for, to prop each other up when they needed it the most. I reached out and took Bianca by the arm and pulled her close. I ran a hand through her hair, marveling at the sensation of all those silky strands gliding past my fingers. She smelled good, felt warm. My nerves soothed. My pulse, which I hadn't realized had been racing, slowly steadied. I smiled, losing myself in those enigmatic eyes of hers. We landed it 'cause we're the best. Bianca's smile melted my heart. Seeing her happy, knowing that I was the reason for that happiness. Was there anything better? You're the best. Come here. I felt Bianca's fingers trace along the back of my neck, gently guiding me towards her. Our lips pressed together. Such a good kisser. Responsive, attentive, hungry for love. Could have stayed like that forever. Drowned everything else out so I could lose myself in the moment. But moments like that never lasted. Bianca pulled away, a cool rush of air filling the void. Her cheeks looked about to burst. Love you. Love you too, Calabacita. Jesus. I'd nearly let it slip. And I hadn't even realized it. Bianca slipped free from my arms and started back towards her office. She glanced over her shoulder, a smile still on her face. By the way, you've got a stain on your dress. Yeah, I whispered, grateful we hadn't made eye contact. Thanks.